Hey, blessed be, and welcome to an occasional edition of Spirit of the Age. My name is Miss Wolf Kitten, and I'm just popping on here for a quick interlude because don't we live in some interesting times? I am a little what you might call astro-curious. I find it interesting when astrological indications coincide with what we're seeing out here on terra firma, and even more so when you can look back and see things that had been noted that we now see happening around us right now, and verdad, is this a year for that? Most of you are probably familiar with the idea of Mercury retrograde. And heads up, the next one hits just a couple of days before the summer solstice. But you might not have realized that all planets are subject to going retrograde. And this year, every one of them is either doing it right now or will before the year is out. Our planets are making us back up and deal with things that haven't been resolved or where progress has been blocked. See what I mean about sounding familiar? Yeah. We have got 4 retrogrades going on right now: Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. Venus is who you can blame if your ex suddenly popped back up or if you find yourself going over old relationship patterns yet again. But as the goddess of love, Venus is normally all about unity. As she reverses course, she's asking us to review where disunity may lie: injustice, separation, exclusion rather than inclusion. It's no secret that many of us are in great pain right now. Venus is asking us to sit with our pain, acknowledge it, and begin addressing those wounds. One more thing here: 2 of our retrograde planets are traditionally considered female and 2 male. The other female planet is Pluto, whose manifestation is that of the Dark Mother. Hecate, Caradwin, perhaps even more so, Kali. She is here to clear it all away by forcing us to take a deeper look at all we've been hiding inside ourselves. That theme is going to keep coming up in all of this, so take note. This leaves our 2 retrograde male planets, Jupiter and Saturn. Every retrograde is a time to look back over the area that particular planet oversees. Saturn is the one that's catching my attention, but Jupiter shouldn't be ignored here. Sometimes known as the luck planet, Jupiter rules good fortune, hope, benevolence, justice. While it's backtracking, it's urging us to consider our worldview, particularly where justice and equality are concerned. Again, sound familiar? Jupiter's giving us the chance to correct our course if we feel it isn't taking us where we want to go. And in case that isn't impetus enough on its own, Jupiter is also conjunct Pluto, which means the 2 planets are appearing to occupy the same portion of the sky right now. And since Pluto is bringing that dark feminine energy of the crone to the table, we can see where the stars are strongly underpinning and encouraging the recalibration we see going on all around us right now. And then there's Saturn. Particularly at this moment in time, I can't help but think of Goya's famous painting of Saturn devouring his children, a frenzied psychopath caught in the darkness who is unable to control his homicidal behavior. Phew. Saturn is known to us by the more simplistic name of Father Time. We know him as the old man who is deposed at year's end to be replaced by the New Year's baby, and who will, in turn, age until he's displaced the following December. This is a myth that I see being enacted at every turn right now, except that we're used to Father Time surrendering, knowing his rule has ended, and instead we're being faced right now with a Saturnine manifestation that is refusing to yield. We can easily see this as a commentary on the current impotus, and of course it is, but I see him merely as a figurehead. The ancient monster that would devour his own rather than give up the reins of power is the larger dominator culture, what we used to call the patriarchy back in the 70s. Every out-of-control cop, every gun-wielding white supremacist, every unidentified black ops militia standing guard, every one of them is a manifestation of this old paradigm energy, and it's refusing to yield the stage. Saturn rules structure, discipline, authority, limitations, all things that the dominator culture wants to impose on us, to force us into the neat little boxes it has assigned to everyone. But here's what I'm seeing. Saturn entered the futuristic, permissive, forward-looking sign of Aquarius back at the spring equinox, right when everything shut down. And then last month, it began retracing its steps, heading back towards Capricorn, which is home territory for that planet. It's fleeing the march of progress, metaphorically speaking. Saturn wants to go back to a past where things were safe, for its adherents anyway, and everything was neatly defined. Unfortunately, for those who want to reestablish the old normalcy, every other aspect of our lives is or will be asking us to reconsider if that's really where we want to go, leading to the shakeups and reevaluations that we're seeing on a pretty much daily basis. There's some kind of obscure astrological rationale going on here, but suffice to say that we are finding that what has been normal for so long is now out of step, particularly where social rules and expectations are concerned. Saturn is not going to be back on a footing where it can have a real say in any of this for well over a decade, and our definition of normal is probably going to have shifted quite a bit by then. Anyway, if all that isn't enough, I haven't even addressed today's lunar eclipse, which was the whole point I wanted to make this originally. The moon represents our emotions, how we feel about everything that's going on. A moon that is currently shining full in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. And did I mention that Jupiter is the child that Saturn wasn't able to devour? Sorry, I was really going to try not to get into the weeds with this, but there is so much going on here right now. The moon, of course, is full tonight, and those of you with Gemini or Sagittarius prominently in your chart might feel this energy more than usual, which is true anytime there's a full moon or a new moon. If it's in your sign or opposite your sign, you can expect it to have a little more influence on you than it might otherwise. Anyway, Sag, like its ruler Jupiter, is bouncy and enthusiastic and an outgoing sign. However, today that's not only countered by the sun, but by our retrograde Venus, and both of them are sitting in dualistic Gemini, asking us to think twice. Our desires might no longer be suited to the times. We may have to let go of some emotional attachments that could be clouding our judgments. This can quite specifically include attachments to the privilege that many of us have enjoyed while our sisters and brothers have gone without. Our Sag moon wants to party and feel good, and maybe that seems like a return to the comfortable ways we've been used to. Certainly when we see bars and patios full of those who are carrying on like it's just another Saturday, Friday night in June, we see that desire in action. But the sun and Venus are challenging that, diminishing that carefree full moon energy by bringing up all the things we might just as soon forget. All those bad habits, those addictive behaviors, the ways that we have served or benefited from the power over structure, it's all being laid out there for us to defend or to discard. It's eclipse season. No more hoping if we ignore it, it will all go away, because the light is bright upon it. Earlier, I mentioned patriarchy. One reason that term is being replaced with dominator culture is that it soon became clear that men, too, are victims of patriarchal society. Men whose skin isn't the right color, men who love other men, men who in 1,000 different ways don't fit the rigid definition of what a man is supposed to be. All that structure that the current illegitimate regime is so desperate to reestablish If it ever served us, that day is past. We're approaching the midnight hour on a metaphorical New Year's Eve, and Father Time is trying everything he can think of to turn back the clock. As Goya showed us, Saturn was so fearful of a future that was no longer centered around him, he was willing to kill and eat his own children so that none could replace him. In just this way, the maladministration in Washington is so fearful of a future where they no longer lord it over the masses, they're willing to attack us with tear gas, pepper spray, put up even taller fences, imprison us indefinitely, suspend our rights, and turn our defense forces against our own people. But the stars are encouraging us to reconsider. Confronting the toxins that have invested our body politic isn't pleasant, but symptoms of this disease have clearly become worse than the cure. And as we've seen, our planets are all urging us to reevaluate, to purge the poisons in our system. And that's just the planets that I've talked about so far. In a couple weeks' time, I could be back here telling you about Mars and Neptune. Eventually we'll get Uranus into the mix, and if I've skipped anybody, they're coming too, trust me. They're all about to mix it up with the rest of the sky. Mars is actually in on this already, opposing, well, for astro nerds, squaring things that are going on, but there's only so much I want to get into right now. I think the thing that I would most like folks to take away from this is, well, first, there's this old saying that it's steam engines when it comes steam engine time. And boy, oh boy, does this ever feel like the time. Things are on the brink of change, right here, right now. And we're seeing this massive struggle over who gets to have a say in how that change will go down. One thing should be very clear. There is no going back. Not going to happen. If President Grandpa and the Saturn Squad have their say, a very limited few may get to enjoy a resumption of their power and privilege for as long as they can hold on to it. But we're already seeing the lengths to which they feel the need to go to quell what are still fairly mild disturbances. And they've already cranked it up to 10. They're not going to be able to relax that death grip for a minute, because they know we'll still be here, ready to come roaring back. And when you get right down to it, as Jim Morrison once said, they've got the guns, but we've got the numbers. I don't think it's going to go there, not quite, but I also don't think we're ready to pull back from the brink quite yet either, unfortunately. Just a glimpse at the stars ahead, and it looks like fall is going to see things back on the boil if they ever simmer down at all. But I also don't think that the forces of Gruat the Gray Face are going to win in the long run. Aside from all the cosmic energies that are encouraging us to make positive changes, aside too from the fact that those at the top are completely incompetent, we have another powerful tool at our disposal, one that you and I are both using right now. I have sometimes been known to use the term the astral internet. The internet is, in many ways, the astral plane brought to a level where nearly anyone can access it. You know, if this pandemic had struck 20 years ago, even 10, we wouldn't have been anywhere near as prepared to handle it as now. And leaving aside the way it's not being handled in this country. But almost none of us could have worked from home. We couldn't Zoom chat or have virtual happy hours or any of this stuff. I couldn't be talking to you like this now. Not where I was 10 years ago. But more to the point, we can now see in virtually real time the abuses that are happening on our streets. And for so many, it's been hidden up till now. We know names like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, Ahmaud Arbery, Philando Castile, Trayvon Martin. And we know that for every one of these names, there are so many more whose stories we haven't heard. We know that not only the brutality of our police, but The absolute chaos and instability of our government is being seen around the world. We also know, though, that hundreds and hundreds of thousands of our fellow citizens are willing to stand up against all this. We know that our voices are being heard and they're making an impact. We know these discussions aren't only happening at our dinner table or in hushed tones amongst friends. Not anymore. Right here, right now, we are collectively having a say. We are voicing our opinions in a way that our supposedly representative government has failed to allow us to do. We're creating the future together. One thing about eclipses, and we've got 2 more coming up this summer, they're agents of change and portals to the universe next door. We know that things are out of balance and that the pendulum has been pulled artificially far in a direction that most of us don't agree with. There's a lot of anger being expressed, a lot of raw emotion out there. But if we stay connected to the earth, to the dreams of a better future that we have all been quietly cherishing, and remember, we're here to help each other and to heal. We have this incredible opportunity to come out of this stronger and better than ever before. Peace. Now, get out there, and as my friend Shell would say, namaste.